price down. So that all is interlinked. The quota and ETS increase the willingness to pay. That is really good, because that's a starting point. And in many cases, e-kerosene, for example, willingness to pay through the quota is already at the same level as our production cost. But what the quota doesn't do is it doesn't take away the uncertainty about the price level over the next 20 years. So it doesn't achieve bankability in its own rights yet. But to link a CFD, a government CFD, in combination with a quota means very little government money required for the CFD, because it, in inverted commas, gives 20-year certainty. It's more like an insurance function. And as you can see, this chart that you see here is not unrealistic. We will have a payment of government to the project in the early years, but we will extremely likely, in many, many products, have a recouping, a clawback in the later years of production. From a government perspective, that makes a big difference, of course, in terms of government exposure. So that's why we would say, if we want to fulfill all these objectives, number one is clearly fulfilled by quota and ETS, fills the price gap between production cost and willingness to pay. Number two is CFD. If we make both together, as a result, we have the highest bang for the buck in terms of volumes of hydrogen that we get for government money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Could we deepen the reflection on the, how to achieve more investment certainty? And I would now turn to Mr. Masche. I mean, you have this idea. You heard the member states, how they try to give you the framework that will drive investments. What's your opinion about that? How, is that sufficient? What do we need?
Thanks for the invitation. Just before, I will speak about with two hats. The first one as a developer, and the second one as a manufacturer, as HDF is developing a project, but also fuel cells, high power fuel cells. Just to come back to the three objectives, I deeply think that it's a real opportunity to develop business, and we see it right now on the development that we are doing, not only in Europe, but also outside Europe. For refinery, for example, but also for ammonia projects. But it's also drivers new businesses, such as on maritime application. Right now, we are developing fuel cells for this maritime application that will be key tomorrow, but also for application on grid services also. But just to come back on the bankability of project, you mentioned it. What is key today is to de-risk project. So de-risking project is acting not only on the contract, so end user contract, HPA, but also on PPAs. So this is one point. But it's also a question of competitivity. Competitivity is locating project in the best areas with the best cost of electricity, capacity, production, but also to have a clear regulation framework. So we can see that REDIII should be clear. But when you speak with specific geographies, it's a bit different. Today, only 2 countries have implemented REDIII. So, and okay, there are some that are coming, but even if they have implemented this regulation, we see some difference in terms of quotas for transportation, but also for the industry application. And if you stand as a bank point of view, it's very complex because you don't know where you are playing. So it's very important to give some vision on this implementation and to have, a kind of alignment between European countries on that. The second point is, this RFNBO declination. We all know about geographies, temporalities, and additionalities criteria. We see that on the PPAs markets, it's quite difficult. We see a rise of price, difficulty to get PPAs right now on a long-term basis because we are in competition with other applications. So this is a critical point. That's also imply the fact that we will need all to import hydrogen importation needs to have a clear view on the traceability and certification of hydrogen. And today, it's not the case. For instance, at HDF, we are developing projects in Morocco or in Trinidad. And today, it's difficult to join the FID since we don't have this regulation framework completely set up. And so just to end up, what is important as a developer today is first to have a clear implementation of this regulation, but to have an aligned regulation between countries. That's one point. Second point is really to concentrate investment in some specific areas. So we know that REDIII accelerate some permitting issues, but it's not at the right level now. We need really to accelerate on this point. And the last point, if we want to have a global market at European level, it's to develop infrastructure. So we saw on the previous slide that it's ongoing, but we need to put the money at the right place on this infrastructure, meaning that we need to have pipes, but we need also to have storage. If you don't have that, you cannot have a global market. And the last point, which is also an important and crucial, is the combination of molecules and electrons. This is the key point. We know that we are playing, okay, to decarbonize some sectors, some industrial sectors, but there is also some key issue on the network, on the electricity networks. We know that the demand on electricity will be huge. So if we don't manage to securize electricity infrastructure, and by the way, the molecule ones behind that, and how we can support the grid and electricity by power-to-power project, we will have some issues. So that's my conclusion point.
Thank you. Thank you for putting hydrogen in this wider perspective, or also linking to the quick deployment of power generation and the issues related to mixing up not only CFDs into this framework for hydrogen, but also PPAs, so market-based instruments, and I think this is a very valid, very important point. I will ask now Shell, you know, how does, Mr. Beard, how does the Renewable Energy Directive, how do the targets influence your activities? And maybe we could zoom in a little bit on the transport target. It was mentioned that there is a difference. There is a difference in terms of implementation, in terms of the speed of the projects in both. So how should we be looking at the transport part?
So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this really important conversation around the future of the hydrogen industry within Europe. I think in Shell, we believe the energy transition is not just about decarbonization, it's also about driving economic growth and economic competitiveness. And I think if we look today, Fit for 55 was a great step forward, create a good bit of momentum, a good foundation for the hydrogen industry. But if we look elsewhere, there's some other positive signals, such as putting RFNBO targets in REDIII and making them binding. But if we take one step back and we look at where we are in terms of transpositions, 5 countries out of 27 have transposed this. If we don't move forward swiftly and consistently, this will delay and slow down the industry. It's really important that forward-looking, this policy framework is realistic, it's pragmatic, with a number of the steps that my panel members have already mentioned around loosening some of the requirements for RFNBO. But also it has to be aligned. The complexity is not helping. And as head of Shell's low-carbon hydrogen business, I really see the power of having a supportive policy framework in place and helping us move forward and make investment decisions. With 1 million hours of safe construction under our belt, we're really making progress. Up on the screen here, you can see 2 of our projects that are well on the way to commissioning. These are set for commissioning in end of 2026 and into 2027. So these are fantastic proof points. But we've only been able to make these investments happen due to a certain number of factors. Firstly, we have access to infrastructure. This is infrastructure in our own refineries and access to public infrastructure. In the case of HH1, with the hydrogen backbone, as Shell acting as the anchor customer, we've been able to move forward with that. In addition, we have line of sight to customers. Gijs talked about captive demand. Through the refinery route, this allows us to de-risk our projects. In addition, we have had a supportive policy framework. If we take the Netherlands as an example, the landing of the correction factor and the acknowledgement that the refinery route is helping HH1, our 200 megawatt electrolyzer, stay competitive. Moving to Germany. Germany has put in a number of additional incentives on top of acknowledging the refinery route as a pathway, which has included relaxation on additionality, grid fee exemptions, and multipliers. These all helped us move forward with an early investment rather than delaying that. But, you know, the proverb says that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So, you know, we want to be here in 2030 sitting in the European Hydrogen Week with celebrating more successes. But those successes have to be both on the supply and the demand side as well. We've got to overcome the barriers, which is lack of infrastructure, high production costs, fragmented regulation, and lack of third-party demand. And that third-party demand, there's already a proof point of how we can overcome that. The refinery route is a great example. Here, we have a captive market where there is regulation on the demand side, where fuel suppliers are obligated to reduce their fuel carbon intensity. And by allowing hydrogen to help with that compliance, it opens up a market. And because the value chain is captive, it allows us to manage the costs associated with that across the value chain. However, when you get to the industry targets, it's very different. It's an uneven playing field where the end consumers don't necessarily have line of sight to customers. So therefore, Shell's view is that we should be encouraging lead markets. These lead markets will give a red line and visibility to end use. So we can see that there is one, demand coming, which will give certainty to help encourage future investments, and it will help close the affordability gap as well. So we do encourage the Commission to really look at private procurement as part of the Industrial Decarbonisation Acceleration Act, and be bold. We have proposals, we're willing to help contribute. We think this will be a really positive step forward where we can replicate the success of these captive markets in the broader industry as well. So I think we want to go together, we want to collaborate, we want to find these opportunities. And not only will we decarbonize industry, but we'll make European industry more competitive as a result.
Thank you very much, and thanks in particular for mentioning the very important role of the lead markets, and that's the initiative on which my colleagues from Directorate General GROW are indeed working. You know, I think there should be results out pretty soon. Are there any reactions from any of the speakers to what has been said? I mean, we heard on the one hand the need for predictable framework ambition. On the other hand, I think quite a few calls for being realistic, being flexible. Any very quick remarks on, you know, how to square that?
Yeah. No, just because the buzzword lead markets has been dropped, and I just want to add, I think I mentioned briefly that this is something we're looking into very closely as well, and we think this is a good instrument. You always have to see, of course, what are the effects for the consumer, for the prices. So for one example is we looked at the lead markets for wind turbines, green steel. You know, if this makes the electricity price only 0.2 cents more expensive, it's a problem, you know. So there are always these two sides, and but nevertheless, I think this is an important instrument tool, and we look at this.
Thank you.
Just add Just one word on industry, because we talk a lot about the industry transposition, how difficult it is. Green hydrogen industry in Europe is largely fertilizer production. That's the main discussion point. Fertilizer in the EU today is produced on the basis of natural gas. And a lot of that natural gas is still imported into the EU. If we want to be resilient, which I think we all want to be, we need to keep the fertilizer production in the EU and start replacing the natural gas-based fertilizer production with ammonia-based fertilizer production. And that ammonia can come from domestic or from imported resources as well. I think that's where the transposition becomes so important. And now we have, in order to protect the industries, and it makes it difficult for them, we have given them time under the ETS until the mid-2030s to not feel the effect of the ETS, which basically makes the CBAM non-effective as well, which makes it a very difficult situation for the BASFs and so on of this world, that they cannot and will not invest into grey production anymore because they know 2039 is coming, but they don't invest into green production either because they are exempt for the next couple of years to a large extent from the effect of the ETS, which brings the cost of production of green to a very same level to grey plus ETS already. So I think that is a point that we didn't discuss today. I think this is important, because if we don't get that transformation of the fertilizer industry in Europe started, we might wake up in 2035 and then we don't have fertilizer industry in Europe anymore at all. So that's why I think this is really important to get started and not in small steps, but rather reconsider how ETS and CBAM can work to achieve what it's actually supposed to do.
Thank you.
Yes, I confirm your point. I think it's very key to have the CBAM and the REDIII well aligned to ensure that okay, we can protect our production, our industry. That's key, and we see that today mandates are very huge. If we spoke about the mandate for ammonia, so this is crucial today.
Thank you very much for these quick reactions. And now let's move to closing remarks. They will be delivered by Mr. Jóźwiak from Orlen. Let's hear what the situation looks like from the Polish perspective, the Polish large energy company.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to explain these closing remarks as a short story, and we are on the half of this story, and I hope that finally this story will be a successful story in Orlen regarding the implementation of RFNBO hydrogen. But I would like to start first from information that Orlen is responsible for energy delivery in Central Eastern Europe. Energy delivery means fuels, electricity, but also fertilizers. So this is quite big responsibility, and as we discussed now today, not only fulfillment of legislation is very important, but also building some kind of energy security and energy resilience. So this is it is worth to mention that hydrogen can play very important role in domestic production and protection of energy supply of this region. We as Orlen, we have quite ambitious strategy, because we are going to consume till 2035 350 KT of low carbon and renewable hydrogen. And this is quite big goal, and it's not only focusing on fulfillment of, for example, REDIII directive, but our own carbon neutrality strategy. So we also focusing of implementation of low carbon hydrogen. And I would like to present you one of our project which is focused on production of hydrogen, RFNBO hydrogen, dedicated for decarbonization of one of our refinery located in north of Poland. We prepared this project and we participate in IPCEI program. We received European Commission notification, and finally this year, honestly speaking, in September, we received finally money from national level on the amount of 450 million euro for support of 200 megawatt installed capacity in electrolysis processes. So now we protect the financing for this project, we protect the technical issue for this project, land. We located this project in quite favorable location, close to the offshore area, offshore wind farms area of Baltic Sea. But we see, let's say, two big challenges connected with legislation. First is connected with additionality, because all these renewables located on Baltic Sea will be supported, so we cannot use this electricity as a supply of our project. So we need to find other sources of renewable electricity, quite more expansive. And second topic is connected with stable production of hydrogen dedicated for refineries. So also we need to remember that Howley correlation can, honestly speaking, kill the business of delivery the RFNBO hydrogen for refinery, because first system is not ready for quick reaction for different supply of hydrogen. Of course, we can invest for storage, but storage of hydrogen or storage of electricity, but it will be very costly today. So better is to a bit change the legislations. And finally, if we are talking about the summary of our postulates which are needed for the realization of success story of this project, is first technology neutrality approach. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, in our strategy we have this approach. So we are going to produce hydrogen not only based on renewables, but also based on low carbon solutions like waste to hydrogen technologies, based to blue hydrogen. Additionality rules, we propose to postpone this rule. We do not think that we need to cancel this rule, but we should at least postpone for a few years, just to give us opportunity to start the production of RFNBO hydrogen. Howley correlation, this is also something which is very important to remember, that if we are going to start with our projects, we need to first learn how we can deliver the hydrogen for industry, and we need some time to prepare the system. So also IT systems for monitoring, for certification. And last but not least, the European Hydrogen Bank. We think that the approach should be changed. So it is good to think about some kind of geographical baskets which allow us to also receive some money from this mechanism in this Central Eastern Europe region. So this is also, in our opinion, very important. So this small changes needed for success of implementation of RFNBO hydrogen projects, and I think this is not only our observations, but as we discussed, this is a joint European business observation, and better is to focus on very quickly change these regulations and focus on building the energy resilience in this part of Europe, because this is more important now when we have this difficult geopolitical situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and with this, I would like to thank all our panelists for great food for thought for us, for the Commission, which falls, I would say, pretty timely, because we're running a market analysis. We're running a study not only on what's the situation in the hydrogen market, in industry, in transport, but also what are the obstacles holding up projects, holding up the market development, and we should have some results of the study next year. basically on the basis of which we'd like to draw conclusions as to further action, as to what this tells us in policy terms. So once again, thank you very much for this good exchange, and I'd like to also thank our audience for being with us in spite of running into the lunch break. Thank you very much.